Hi, shalom friends. The Bible actually describes man as a tree. And there's much to think about this concept, why as a metaphor is man a tree. But I'm going to go on a slightly different track and ask you, if we accept that there's so many lessons to be derived from a tree to a man and a man to a tree, if you had to describe a righteous man, what tree would you liken him to? Would you say he's a cherry tree, grapefruit? Certainly not a thorn bush, God forbid. Well, it's something which is intriguing, but King David in Psalm 92 actually gave us a metaphor for a righteous man. And I'll read it for you. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree, grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon. Well, let's just imagine. The tree is tall, it's stately, it doesn't bend. The wind comes, the rain comes, and it just is able to withstand adversity. Well, those are some qualities of a very righteous person, that he's not buffeted by what people are thinking or feeling. If necessary, he stands strong and tall. He's actually a symbol people look up to, a tzaddik. So he's truly like a cedar in Lebanon. But what we might want to think about is, why does King David give two metaphors? Not only like a cedar of Lebanon, but like a date tree, he will flourish. What's special about the date tree that the cedar tree does not possess? So the Holy Baal Shem Tov gave him a wonderful insight, and he explained the cedar tree, as impressive as it is, the cedar of Lebanon is actually a symbol, but it doesn't give any fruit. So essentially, it's an outstanding symbol of being correct, of standing straight, but yet people will not profit from that tree unless they actually go underneath perhaps the foliage. But a date tree has an effect on the world around it, because after all, it gives fruit. So the righteous, there's one type of a righteous person who's like a cedar tree. Indeed, he's an inspirational figure, and people look up to him. But actually, they don't really interact with the tzaddik, with the righteous one, and as a result, the influence is rather peripheral. However, the righteous one, who's compared to a date tree, people participate with him, interact with him, are affected by him, and essentially change their life for the better because of him. A parallel thought to this teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is the Hasidic adage, and I'll say it in Yiddish, a tzaddik in pelts. Literally it means the righteous person in a fur coat. We all know that if it's cold in a room, you put on a sweater. So the sages, the Hasidic masters suggested if a person is in a room, it's very, very cold. So what he should do is put on a fur coat, and then he will become warm, which is wonderful. Except the only person that's being warmed in this room is the person that has the fur coat. What happens though if there's a different type of a person who sees everyone shivering and he has a fur coat and he says, I'm not going to put on the fur coat so I will be warm, because that's not going to do anything for anyone else. Instead, I will make a fire. So in this case, we can all be warmed up. So the Hasidim say, well, there's one type of a tzaddik who looks around, sees a world that's cold, indifferent, apathetic, to Judaism, to holiness, to sensitivity. So he puts on a fur coat, he wraps himself with rapture to be dedicated to the Almighty, and he is warm. But the people around him and the surroundings remain cold. But there's a different tzaddik who sees the frozenness of the environment, realizes that there are people that are completely disconnected to their source of life. And what does he do? He shares his enthusiasm and his warmth with others. So here he makes the fire to warm up the people in the room. He is much more similar to the tzaddik who's compared to the date tree than to the cedar tree. Very interesting. Where do date trees grow? We know that just like anything that grows, it needs sun, it needs water, it needs a hospitable environment. Fascinating, in the land of Israel, one of the most inhospitable environments for growing things from the ground is the lowest area in Israel called the Dead Sea. It's actually the lowest level, it's furthest removed from sea level. And it's brackish, the water, it's filled with all kinds of salt and minerals. And essentially whatever grows in hot houses or hydroponics, with one noticeable exception. There are actually date trees, date orchards there. I think Engedi, is there. They produce the most beautiful fruit. Tasty, luscious, sweet. And in fact, I remember growing up hearing stories of, in a desert of sand, there's an oasis. And what do we find in an oasis? Water and date trees. Now, if the date tree is that tzaddik, that symbolizes the individual who cares enough about others and is committed to bettering others, then what follows is, where else should he be found? In other words, a date tree that's found in a fertile environment where all kinds of beautiful things are growing and beautiful flowers are growing. Why do you need a date tree in a place where there are apple trees and fragrant bushes and beautiful roses? But if you go to a place where, as if to say, there's desolation, nothing's really growing. People, or in this case, trees are not growing because it's just not the right place. Then the date tree says, I'll show you that what we have to do is, in a place of desolation or of heat or lack of water, of saline type of ground, even over there, one can and should produce fruit that will benefit others. So this is really quite an inspiring lesson, because righteous people have the ability to ignore the world. But do they have the ability to transform the world? That's the date tree. The cedar tree ignores the world. The date tree, not only does it not ignore it, it is cognizant of it, and it actually uses the heat and I keep using the word environment, or the surroundings, to produce luscious fruit. So friends, everyone likes to go on a date. Let's go a step further. Let's try to be the date. Shalom.